The Galactic War Academy had seen many things in its 3,000-year history. Rebellious cadets, eccentric instructors, even that one incident with the sentient jello cube that somehow passed the entrance exam. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared them for Kayla Morrison. She sat in the back row of Tactical Navigation 101, looking for all the universe like she was contemplating whether the cafeteria would serve those synthetic protein patties again. Small by galactic standards, barely reaching the shoulder of the average Velkari cadet beside her, she seemed utterly unremarkable. Her skin was that strange peachy color humans had, her hair this bizarre brown mess that apparently grew naturally from her scalp, and her eyes? Well, they were just there. Not compound, not multifaceted. Just two simple orbs that somehow managed to see things better than most species with 8. Commander Thrax clicked his mandibles in annoyance as he projected the holographic war map across the classroom. 27 star systems bloomed into existence, connected by hyperspace lanes, marked with defensive positions, fleet movements, and strategic objectives. This was his masterpiece, the result of 40 cycles of military service, countless battles, and 3 lost appendages. Now then, cadets, Thrax announced, his translator crackling slightly from years of battlefield use. This represents the Battle of the Thorian Expanse, a textbook example of superior tactical positioning. Note how the Dominion forces here. He gestured with one of his 4 arms, managed to hold off an enemy fleet 3 times their size by utilizing the gravitational anomalies in Sector 7. The class dutifully took notes. Well, most of them did. The Zephyrian twins were comparing tentacle lengths under their desk. The crystalline being from Arcturus Prime was literally asleep, its consciousness having drifted into a lower energy state. And the human? She was doodling something on her datapad. The key to their victory, Thrax continued, warming to his subject, was the brilliant deployment of interdiction fields here, and here, more gestures, more glowing points on the map. By cutting off these hyperlanes, they forced the enemy into a kill box where numerical superiority meant nothing. A soft snort echoed from the back row. Thrax's head swiveled a full 180 degrees. Is there a problem? Cadet Morrison, she looked up, those weirdly simple eyes blinking once, twice. No, sir. Sorry, sir. I just thought of something funny. Perhaps you'd like to share your amusing observation with the class? Not really, sir. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Every cadet knew that tone. That was the tone that preceded someone being sent to scrub the waste recyclers with a molecular brush. I insist, Thrax said, each word dripping with enough venom to dissolve a small moon. Kayla sighed, the way someone might sigh when asked to explain why water was wet. She stood up, all 5 feet and change of her, and walked to the front of the class. The other cadets watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. The human was either very brave or very stupid, possibly both. She studied the holographic map for exactly 6 seconds. Then she reached out and, with the casual air of someone adjusting a picture frame, began moving things around. Your interdiction fields are in the wrong place, she said, shifting the glowing barriers 30 degrees clockwise. The gravitational distortion from the binary stars in Sector 9 would have rendered them useless here. Also, she dragged 3 fleet positions to entirely different systems. The Dominion forces weren't here, they were here. And here. And this group? She deleted an entire battle group with a swipe. They didn't exist. Common historical misconception. Someone confused them with the 45th Expeditionary Force, which was actually 2 sectors over dealing with a pirate incursion. The class held its collective breath. Several species that didn't even need to breathe held it anyway. Just for dramatic effect, furthermore. Yay, Kayla continued, apparently oblivious to the mounting tension. The enemy fleet wasn't 3 times larger. It was actually smaller by about 15%. The Dominion commanders inflated the numbers in their after-action reports to make their victory seem more impressive. Pretty standard military practice, really. Asias, and this whole section? She waved at roughly a third of the map. This is upside down. Common mistake when converting from Valkyrie spatial coordinates to standard galactic. You have to account for their species' natural magnetic field perception. She stepped back, examining her handiwork with a critical eye. Oh, and there should be a nebula here, kind of important, since that's where the actual battle took place. The whole thing was basically a big game of hide and seek in a cosmic fog bank. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as a weapons-grade stunning agent. Commander Thrax stood frozen, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. His tactical display, the culmination of decades of research, now looked like someone had thrown it into a blender with a history book and a stellar cartography chart. He managed, his mandibles working soundlessly. How could you possibly? Kayla shrugged, a uniquely human gesture that somehow managed to convey complete indifference to the cosmic significance of what she'd just done. My mom was a historian. My dad was a navigator. Family dinner conversations got weird sometimes. But the classified archives, the military records, the tactical analysis. Oh, those? Another shrug. Yeah, they're mostly wrong. Like hilariously wrong. Did you know that half the battles in the official records never actually happened? And the ones that did happen are usually in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong people? It's like someone played a galactic game of telephone. But everyone was drunk and spoke different languages. A tentacle shot up from the middle rows. Question. If the records are wrong, how do you know what really happened? Kayla turned those unsettling simple eyes on the questioner. Cross-referencing. You take the official reports, compare them with shipping logs, maintenance records, personal diaries, medical files, even restaurant receipts from stations near the battle sites. Amazing what you can figure out when you realize that Ensign Gorwick couldn't have been at the Battle of Kepler Station because he was listed as ordering a sandwich at a cafe 12 systems away at the same time. And before you ask, yes, I checked. They didn't have faster-than-light sandwich delivery back then. Another cadet, this one a gelatinous blob that communicated through color changes, flickered a confused purple. But why would anyone lie about military history? The human actually laughed. It was a disturbing sound, like someone had taught a predator to find things amusing. Why? Politics. Ego. Budget allocations. Propaganda. Take your pick. You know the Great Zephyr Offensive? The one where a single dreadnought supposedly held off an entire armada? Yeah, it turns out that was actually 17 ships, 3 space stations, and a mining consortium that hired really good publicists. The single dreadnought thing made for a better movie deal. Commander Thrax finally found his voice. This is preposterous. I've studied these battles for longer than your species has had space flight. I've walked the battlefields. I've interviewed the survivors. Have you, though? Kayla asked, tilting her head in that unnerving way humans had. Because according to the medical records I found, you've been stationed at this academy for the past 60 cycles. Kind of hard to walk battlefields when you're teaching basic tactics to freshmen. And those survivors you interviewed? I checked the mortality records. Most of them died before you were even hatched, unless you've got a time machine. Hidden somewhere, you've been talking to either imposters or ghosts, and given that ghosts aren't real, I'm betting on imposters. The crystalline being from Arcturus Prime chose that moment to wake up. Did I miss anything important? The human just dismantled everything we know about military history in less time than it takes to order coffee, someone whispered. Oh. Is that all? Thrax's compound eyes narrowed to slits. If you're so clever, human, then why don't you tell us what really happened at the Battle of the Thorian Expanse? Kayla's expression shifted to something that, on any other species, might have been called predatory amusement. You sure you want to know? It's not exactly heroic. Enlighten us. Enlighten us. Fine. But don't blame me if it ruins your textbook. She turned back to the map, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface with disturbing confidence. First off, it wasn't called the Battle of the Thorian Expanse. The locals called it that massive screw-up near the Pink Nebula. It doesn't have the same ring to it, which is probably why they changed it. The map shifted, transformed, became something entirely different. Gone were the neat fleet formations and tactical positions. In their place was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Here's what actually happened. Admiral Vector of the Dominion fleet got catastrophically lost. Ended up in the wrong spiral arm lost. His navigator had been sampling some questionable substances from the medical bay and inverted the coordinate system. Instead of attacking the enemy supply depot, they jumped straight into the middle of a massive stellar nursery where the rebellion was hiding their main fleet. She added ship positions, but they were scattered, disorganized, some literally flying backwards. The rebellion fleet was just as surprised as the Dominion. They were in the middle of shore leave. Half the crews were on the nearby pleasure station, which, fun fact, is why the official records don't mention it. Hard to explain how your heroic warriors were getting drunk at a karaoke bar when the enemy showed up. More adjustments. A space station appeared, garishly lit and labeled Madame Zix's house of questionable decisions. The battle, if you can call it that, lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Dominion flagship accidentally triggered their own interdiction field, trapping both fleets in the nebula. The rebellion tried to return fire, but their targeting systems got confused by all the baby stars and started shooting at their own ships. 3 vessels collided trying to get to the same hyperlane. The Dominion's dreadnought, pride of their fleet, suffered a critical malfunction when someone spilled stimulant tea on the main control panel. The class watched in horrified fascination as the tactical masterpiece devolved into a cosmic bar fight. The whole thing ended when both sides realized they were out of ammunition and couldn't leave because of the interdiction field. They had to work together to shut it down. The official ceasefire wasn't a negotiated peace. It was 2 fleets agreeing to pretend the whole thing never happened. D. Tactical brilliance everyone studies? That was the cover story they came up with while sharing emergency rations and trying to figure out how to explain this to their respective governments. She stepped back, admiring her work. The Battle of the Thorian Expanse now looked less like a military engagement and more like what would happen if you gave warships to toddlers and told them to play nice. Oh, and the best part, Kayla added, almost as an afterthought. The war ended 2 days before the battle. The peace treaty was signed and everything, but communication lag meant neither fleet knew about it. They fought a completely pointless battle that ended in a draw, in the wrong place, for no reason, and then spent the next 50 years pretending it was a strategic masterpiece. The classroom fell silent, not the respectful silence of students learning. This was the existential silence of beings whose entire worldview had just been put through a cosmic blender. Finally, the Zephyrian twin on the left raised a tentacle. So, everything we've been taught is a lie? Not everything, Kayla said thoughtfully. The dates are mostly right. And the ship names. In space is definitely black. But the actual events? Yeah, those are about as accurate as a navigation system programmed by that tea-spilling ensign I mentioned. Commander Thrax stood very still. If you listened carefully, you could hear the sound of 4 decades of military pride crumbling into dust. How? He whispered. How does a barely sapient species that's been in space for less than a century know more about our history than we do? Kayla considered this for a moment. Honestly, I think it's because we're new at this. You've all had thousands of years to build up these myths and legends. That can take gravity. Hindi on so to turn messy reality into neat propaganda. The Kies. Bakenjia. We're still at the stage where we remember that history is written by whoever has the best PR department. She paused, then added, also, we're really good at being suspicious of authority figures. Comes with the whole predator species thing. And prognosting. When someone tells us a story about glorious victory, our first instinct is to wonder what they're trying to sell us. The gelatinous blob flickered through several colors before settling on a confused beige. But if you know the truth, why haven't you told anyone? Who says I haven't? Kayla grinned, and several cadets involuntarily backed away. Too many teeth. Humans had too many teeth. I've published a few papers, posted some articles on the Galactic Net, But nobody takes them seriously because, I'm human. We're the species that thought it was a good idea to strap ourselves to controlled explosions to get to space. It's not exactly seen as reliable sources of historical accuracy. But the evidence. Doesn't matter if nobody looks at it. She shrugged again. Why? Besides, do you really think the Galactic Council wants to admit that their entire military history curriculum is based on fan fiction written by drunk bureaucrats? Much easier to just keep teaching the pretty lies. The Arcturus prime crystalline being resonated thoughtfully. This is actually quite fascinating. If the official histories are fabricated, it calls into question the entire foundations of our military doctrine. Now you're getting it, Kayla said, brightening considerably. That's the fun part. All those tactical manuals you study, the strategic principles that guide your fleets, they're based on battles that either never happened or happened completely differently. You're essentially learning how to fight wars based on someone's fever dream after eating too much. Your fermented algae. Commander Thrax finally managed to speak in something resembling his normal voice. Cadet Morrison, even if what you say is true, you can't simply rewrite history based on speculation and sandwich receipts. It's not speculation if you have evidence, Kayla countered. Want to know something really fun? That ceasefire I mentioned, the one signed before the battle? I have a copy, digital signature and everything. Got it from a waste management AI that used to serve on the peace delegation's ship. Turns out AIs never forget anything. Even when their organic crews are trying really hard to pretend something didn't happen. She pulled out her datapad and projected a document covered in official seals and signatures. The date stamp was clear. 2 days before the Battle of the Thorian Expanse, but that's impossible, someone whispered. The war ended because of the battle. The mutual respect earned in combat, the recognition of each other's strength. The war ended because both governments were broke and the taxpayers were rioting, Kayla corrected. The battle was an embarrassment that everyone agreed to dress up as a heroic last stand. Much better for morale than admitting your military's greatest victory was actually a cosmic fender-bender caused by a navigator hopped up on medical supplies. The classroom erupted. Tentacles waved, voices rose in multiple languages and frequencies. The Zephyrian twins started arguing with each other. The crystalline being began resonating at a pitch that made everyone's teeth hurt, and through it all, Kayla stood calmly at the front, that unsettling human smile never wavering. Commander Thrax raised all 4 arms for silence. It took several attempts and what might have been a small explosion before the class settled down. Cadet Morrison, he said slowly, assuming for a moment that your interpretation has merit, what exactly do you propose we do? Throw out 3 millennia of military tradition, because one human with questionable sources says so. Questionable sources. Kayla looked genuinely offended. I'll have you know that Waste Management Unit 7742 billion is a highly reliable witness. Just because it spent most of its existence processing organic waste doesn't mean its memory banks are any less accurate, if anything. It's more reliable. You can lie to historians. You can't lie to the AI that handles your toilet functions. Someone in the back row made a strangled sound that might have been laughter or horror. Look, Kayla continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. I'm not saying we need to throw out everything. The principles of space combat are still valid. Physics doesn't care whether the Battle of Kepler Station really happened or not. But maybe, just maybe, we should stop treating these stories like sacred texts and start treating them like what they are. Stories. With lessons, sure, but also with agendas, biases, and really creative accounting. The Valkyrie cadet next to her empty seat finally spoke up. What's creative accounting got to do with military history? Everything. Kayla's eyes lit up with an enthusiasm that was somehow more terrifying than her smile. You know how I mentioned checking restaurant receipts? Turns out the Dominion fleet at Thorian Expanse reported provisions for 30,000 troops, but the amount of food they actually ordered, enough for maybe 8,000. Either they were planning the galaxy's biggest diet, or someone was padding the numbers to get more funding. She tapped her datapad, bringing up spreadsheets that made several cadets' eyes glaze over. Cross-reference that with fuel consumption, waste processing reports, and medical supply requisitions, and the real picture emerges. The glorious Dominion Armada was less than a third its reported size. The rest existed only on paper and in some administrator's retirement fund. But the witnesses. Thrax protested weakly. Ah yes, the witnesses. Kayla's grin widened. Ever notice how every witness account uses the exact same phrases? The sky burned with righteous fire. Our hulls sang the song of victory. The enemy fell before us like grain before the scythe. Either every soldier in the Dominion fleet was a poet, or someone distributed a script personally. I'm betting on the script. Much cheaper than actual combat. The Zephyrian on the right waved several tentacles excitedly. Wait. Are you saying that most historical battles were just accounting fraud? Not all of them, Kayla admitted. Some were real. The Siege of Altair? Totally happened. Though the heroic last stand was actually a communications officer who fell asleep on the distress beacon. The Battle of the Void Dancers? Real. But it was a training exercise that got out of hand when someone loaded live ammunition by mistake. The massacre at Epsilon 5? That was a shipping error. They ordered self-sealing stem bolts. Meant they got planet crackers. Awkward, a new voice piped up from the back. How do you even know all this? Kayla's expression softened slightly. Humans are weird. We know this. We've always known this. But one thing we're really good at, finding patterns. Connecting dots, looking at something and going that doesn't smell right. Maybe it's the predator thing. Maybe it's just because we spent most of our history lying to each other. But when we see a story that's too neat, too clean, too heroic, we start asking questions. She gestured at the mangled war map. Take this battle. Every account talks about brilliant tactics and noble sacrifice, but nobody mentions the station full of drunk soldiers. Nobody explains why the battle happened in a stellar nursery when the strategic target was 3 systems away. Nobody asks why 2 fleets that supposedly hated each other managed to work together to fix their own interdiction field, because that doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative. The crystalline being pulsed a confused orange. It's the story they want to tell. The myth that makes everyone feel better. The lie that becomes truth. Because it's repeated enough times. She paused, considering. You know what the real difference is between humans and everyone else? You've been in space so long you've forgotten that history is messy. We're still new enough to remember that real events don't come with dramatic music and convenient timing. Commander Thrax slumped into his chair, all 4 arms hanging limply. So, what do you suggest, Cadet Morrison? That we abandon our entire understanding of military history? Start over from scratch? Nah, Kayla said casually. That would be way too much work. Besides, some of the myths are useful. They teach important lessons about courage and sacrifice, and not spilling tea on critical systems. But maybe we could add a few footnotes. You know, this battle may not have occurred as described. Our actual casualty figures range from 30,000 to 6 guys who got food poisoning. Just to keep things honest. And you think anyone would accept that? Probably not, she admitted, but it might be fun to try. Imagine the reaction when cadets learned that the famous charge of the Light Brigade was actually 3 ships that forgot to update their navigation software and flew into a sun. Or that the miracle at Proxima was just a clerical error that accidentally discharged half the enemy fleet for unpaid parking tickets. The room fell silent again, but it was a different sort of silence, a thoughtful silence. The kind that preceded either revolution or a very long nap. Finally, the Arcturus being spoke. I must admit, your evidence is compelling, if somewhat disturbing. But if we accept your version of events, what does that mean for us? For our training? For everything we thought we knew? Kayla walked back to her seat, somehow managing to make the journey look like a victory lap despite having just demolished several millennia of military tradition. It means you get to think for yourselves, question the official story. Look for the evidence everyone else ignores. Trust me, the universe makes a lot more sense when you realize that most of it is held together by duct tape. good intentions, and the universal desire to not look stupid in front of the boss. She sat down, pulled out her datapad, and went back to doodling. The image was starting to take shape. It looked suspiciously like Commander Thrax having an existential crisis. "Oh," she added without looking up. "And you might want to fix your interdiction field calculations. The gravitational constant you're using is off by about 12%, common mistake." The scientist who published it was having an affair with his research assistant and mixed up his personal files with his professional ones. The actual constant is in his love poetry folder. Surprisingly good poetry, actually. Terrible math, though. The class ended in chaos. Half the cadets were furiously checking historical records on their datapads. The other half were having what could charitably be called philosophical discussions and less charitably called nervous breakdowns. Commander Thrax remained seated, staring at his ruined war map with the expression of someone who'd just discovered their entire life was based on a typo. As the students filed out, arguing and gesticulating with various appendages, the Valkyrie cadet turned to Kayla. "Are all humans like you?" "Like me how?" Terrifyingly observant. Casually destructive to established order. Weirdly cheerful about exposing millennia of lies, Kayla considered this. "Nah. I'm actually pretty mild by human standards. You should meet my cousin." She proved that the Galactic Constitution was accidentally based on a restaurant menu. Apparently the founding species were really hungry and grabbed the wrong document. That's why Article 7 is about proper soup temperature. The Valkyrie made a sound that might have been laughter or screaming. It was hard to tell with Valkyrie. As the classroom emptied, Kayla remained in her seat, still doodling. The image was complete now. Commander Thrax, surrounded by broken holographic projectors and shattered expectations, with a thought bubble reading, "Maybe I should have become a chef." She smiled to herself. Tomorrow they'd cover advanced fleet tactics. She'd already found evidence that the famous pincer movement was actually invented by a drunk admiral trying to find the bathroom. That would be fun to explain. From the doorway, Commander Thrax's voice drifted back. "Cadet Morrison?" Yes, sir." "That interdiction field calculation, you said the real one is in a poetry folder? File name Ode to Methylated Spirits and Your Eyes. Pretty terrible poem. But the math in verse 3 is solid. And you know this because I cross-referenced the gravitational anomalies in 17 different battles with the standard constants and noticed they only made sense if you used a different number. Then I hacked into the dead scientist's personal archives, read through 6,000 love poems, found the one with math in it, tested the equations, and confirmed it worked. It took about a weekend. A weekend. Dacia, well, a long weekend. Monday was a holiday. Thrax made a sound that definitely wasn't in any translator database. "I think I need a drink." "The bar on level 6 makes a great Arcturian whiskey," Kayla offered helpfully. "Just don't order the Tuesday special. That's not whiskey. That's industrial solvent with food coloring." Found that out the hard way. The commander left without another word, though his departing mutterings included something about predator species and evolutionary mistakes and why did we let them into the academy. Kayla went back to her doodling. Tomorrow's class would be interesting. She'd found evidence that the famous Admiral Zek, then hero of 100 battles, was actually 3 different people sharing one uniform. The height discrepancies in photos were hilarious once you noticed them. Being human in a galaxy full of species who'd forgotten how to question things was endlessly entertaining. They had their impressive technology and their ancient civilizations and their noble traditions. Humans had skepticism, stubbornness, and a deep, abiding conviction that if something sounded too good to be true, someone was probably lying about it. She started a new drawing. This one was the academy itself, built on what everyone said was the site of an ancient battlefield. Next week, she'd point out that it was actually an old sewage treatment plant. The archaeological reports were very clear once you realized that Sacred Warrior Chambers was a mistranslation of waste processing units. The truth was out there. It was just usually funnier than anyone wanted to admit.